Let's take a look at one of the patterns that I like to use with controller as. So inside of the Avengers controller, right here, on line 12 we can see var vm equals this. Now that's a pattern I like to use where I actually capture this inside the controller to a local variable. And vm in this case is going to represent a view model. It's just a name I like to use because it's short, quite frankly. And then here I can reuse vm anywhere I need to. So up top I define all of my things that I'm going to hang off of vm, like Avengers, an array, or title, a property, and then I can use those to bind to the view. So why even capture these off VM? Because quite frankly, I don't need that here. I could just say this dot or this dot title like this. So I could do that as well and then bind off of it. Well, there's two reasons I like to do this, and it's just a pattern that I've picked up on. One is that once in a while, it's nice to be able to know that this is actually what you think it is. So this inside of JavaScript represents the scope of the context for the closure that you're in. So in this case, the controller for Avengers. And then it gets translated with the syntactic sugar over to represent the scope for a view that you might want to bind to in Angular. But what if I have a nested function inside my controller that uses this in a different context, and then this is no longer the scope? Well, that's where I run into a little bit of trouble. So that's why some people do something like this inside the regular JavaScript. Well, they'll create self equals this. Or sometimes you'll see that equals this, which is kind of strange. Or we could do me, or we could do my, or we could do yippee, whatever you want to do here. But the point here is that you want to make sure you're capturing this in a variable that actually makes sense too. So just to avoid any possible issues that I could have with this in a closure, I like to capture it into a variable. And then the other side of this is, well, if I'm going to capture it into a variable, why not capture into a variable that makes sense, like VM? Because that's really what I'm doing here. I'm binding the view to a model. And this is just a pattern that I picked up on that really is no time at all to implement, and it makes it easy to avoid any possible issues with this down the road. And if you're using any kind of linting tools like JSHint, you can actually turn off and disable any warnings for actually setting this to a variable, as shown here in line 11.